Hey guys, about a year ago, DJI released their OM4 gimbal as a successor to the OM3. I know that the OM5 is already out, but I thought this would be a great opportunity to review the OM4 because the product is mature and it's more likely to find this at a deep discount. So this is also my first phone gimbal and I've been using it for the past few weeks. My goal was originally to use my phone more to see if I can incorporate it into my workflow. In this review, we'll compare the gimbal versus just handheld and also talk a bit more about the OM4. We'll go through things like image stabilization, hardware, software features, and we'll also talk about some of the quirks that I found to be quite odd. I purchased this myself and all opinions are my own. Welcome back to Reviews for Life. With phone cameras today, most of them already have some kind of built-in stabilization, which makes handheld videos a lot more smooth. How much of a difference do gimbals actually make? Well, videos will explain this better than words, so let's take a look. To me, the phone's built-in stabilization does a pretty good job, but the gimbal just takes it over the top. Just to see how much work it's actually doing, here's a shot of me holding a laser pointer, trying to hold it as steady as possible. It's still pretty shaky. And here's the same with the laser pointer on a gimbal. What's interesting here is how much the gimbal removes all these micro jitters. And this is just me standing stationary. The moment I start walking, well, it's no comparison. Now, the interesting part is what's happening behind the scenes. We could think of the gimbal as a buffer system that delays movements. So rather than immediately reacting to every movement, it adds them up and plays them out over a period of time. Since the movements are delayed, the gimbal does some fancy math to make the future movements cancel out the previous ones. Take this exaggerated pan motion as an example. When I rotate it back and forth, the gimbal doesn't complete the initial movement before starting to move back. This effectively cancels out my previous actions, producing a very smooth result. So we proved that the gimbal works, and it does its job pretty well. But this does come at a cost to convenience. First of all, it's an additional piece of gear. And second, there's also setup time required. It's a very short setup time though. You just have to unfold it, slide on the magnetic clip, and attach it to the motor. Okay, so you also need to do a bit of balancing, and you have to use their app for that. But DJI does include a magnetic sticker, so you don't have to rebalance every time. Comparing this to just taking out your phone and shooting, it's a lot slower, no matter how you look at it. Now, other than stabilization, there's three main features that really stood out to me. The first is active track. And at first, I thought it was a gimmick, but the more I used it, the more I realized how useful it can be, especially if you don't have another camera operator. Now, normally a shot like this wouldn't have been possible with only a single person. It's able to keep track of me pretty well. And this could be extended out to real estate as well. So if I wanted to show you exactly how big my kitchen is, well, I can just walk around and show it to you. The second feature is the panorama. Handheld is okay and does the job, but you really have to keep it steady. And even then, it's pretty easy to get little artifacts here and there. The gimbal improves this by having tripod legs and also pushing the joystick to do the rotation. And finally, there's the time lapse. And in this case, I'll let the footage do the talking. Okay, so we proved that the gimbal does provide some advantages at the cost of a little bit of convenience. But let's talk more about the app and the gimbal itself. First, the app doesn't feel very polished because it can't access all the camera features, at least on the phone that I'm using. With my Poco F3 camera app, I'm able to do 60 FPS, slow motion, and even multiple cameras. But with the DJI Mimo app, I get none of that. And instead, I can only shoot up to 30 FPS, no slow-mo, and main camera only. Of course, the workaround is to use the stock camera app with the gimbal, but I lose out on the features like follow focus. So there is the trade-off. Another quirk about the app is that the sounds play through the notification volumes. And there's no option in the settings to disable it. I even tried disabling notification permissions, but the sounds still go through. The only way to really silence it is by silencing your phone completely. You could just imagine that if you're out in the field and you're trying to be stealthy, but you forget to do that, well, you just ruin your shot. There's also a few hardware quirks as well. One of the weird things I noticed was the joystick. The thumb joystick is able to spin, and that would make sense if it was linked to some type of control, like roll or manual focus. But it actually does nothing. In fact, it just makes pushing the joystick even harder to control. Another thing I noticed is that the speed of the motors aren't controlled by how far you push the joystick. And instead, the only way to control it is through the app. And finally, the range of motion is supposed to be roughly 360 degrees in all directions. But that's only true mechanically. Like, I could spin the motor 360 degrees, but that doesn't extend to the full controllable range of motion. Take tilt, for example. You can only do about 90 degrees, which is a lot smaller than the advertised number. This limitation of the gimbal really isn't an issue for me, but it's more about how it's documented. Personally, I thought these numbers represented the controllable range of motion, because there's no other section that describes these specs. I like to know these things so I can curb my expectations, instead of finding it out after the purchase. And finally, let's talk about the price. I got this gimbal at a discount at $110 Canadian, used from Amazon. Compared to other gimbals, it's more expensive, but it also has better reviews. Okay, so let's jump into the conclusions. The gimbal definitely makes your shots smoother compared to handheld. Active track allows for shots that would otherwise require an additional camera operator. Time-lapse and panorama shots are greatly simplified. You could generally find the OM4 at a discount. As for downsides, the magnetic mount does help speed up the process, but you still have to balance and calibrate the gimbal. App sounds are controlled through notification volumes instead of a setting within the app. The joystick is poorly implemented. In general, the app feels unpolished and has limited camera controls. And finally, the controllable range of motion is not documented. So overall, is it still worth it? Well, it's one of those tools where you don't have to use, but it's super handy to have when you need it. If you're out traveling with the intention of creating content, then it's a no-brainer. On the other hand, if you're just looking to take some quick pictures, then you probably can do without it. For me, since I like creating content, I think it's worth it. If you've enjoyed this, consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching.